So recently, there's been a publishing from a man named, I believe, Roger Penrose, about how I believe, in a general sense, these points would be called gravitational anomalies, but they're called Hawking points, right? And there's really no benefit to me for making a story like this up. My ego is eternally crippled. But me and one of my exes were talking after I was like, I just got out of reading this book called The Kabbalion, and I was also getting into physics, like reading actual textbooks and things like that. And we came about Hawking points, and we were just talking about them. And when I looked into it, there was only a specific amount, and I believe only like six or so. And I had a theory. I told her, I was like, what if these are not portals, but like entryways to another place, right? I don't know specifically what I said in order to define the other place. If it was another dimension or a previous timeline, whatever the case may be. I don't know. However, what Hawking points are defined by, or defined as, is in conformal cyclic cosmology, Hawking points are predicted as anomalous spots in the cosmic microwave background, acronym CMB, sky, resulting from the Hawking radiation from supermassive black holes in a previous cosmic eon. So I'll reread that without the abbreviations, but in conformal cyclic cosmology, Hawking points are predicted as anomalous spots in the cosmic microwave background sky, resulting from the Hawking radiation from supermassive black holes in the previous cosmic eon. Now, that is as of recent, I believe. So 2020. How recent? That's fairly recent in the grand scheme of things. But there is a article from the University of Oxford, and it talks about Hawking points in the Hawking points in the cosmic microwave background, a challenge to the concept of inflation. So, for 30 years, Oxford mathematician Roger Penrose has challenged one of the key planks of cosmology, namely I'm going to start over. For 30 years, Oxford mathematician Roger Penrose has challenged one of the key planks of cosmology, namely the concept of inflation, now over 40 years old, according to which our universe expanded at an enormous rate immediately after the Big Bang. Instead, 15 years ago, Penrose proposed a counter-concept of conformal cyclic cosmology by which inflation is moved to before the Big Bang and which introduces the idea of preceding eons. The concept has been disputed by most physicists, but Roger and colleagues believe that new evidence has come to light which requires closer inspection and argument. The research is published today in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, acronym MNRAS, and then recent analysis of the cosmic microwave background by Roger, Daniel Ann, Christoph Meisner, and Pawel Nurowski has revealed both in the Planck and WMAP satellite data at 99.98% confidence a powerful signal that had never been noticed previously, namely numerous circular spots, 8 times the diameter of the full moon. The brightest 6 are 30 times the average CMB temperature variations seen at precisely the same locations in the Planck and WAMP data. These spots were overlooked previously owing to a belief that the very early exponentially expanding and inflationary phase of standard cosmology should have obliterated any such features. I'm going to reread that last sentence because it was a mouthful. These spots were overlooked previously owing to a belief that there were very early exponentially expanding inflationary phase of standard cosmology should have obliterated any such features. That the very early exponentially expanding inflation previously owing a belief that the very early exponentially expanding inflationary phase, to a belief that the very early exponentially expanding inflationary phase of standard cosmology should have obliterated any such features. There are alternative universe models about inflation, but most encounter fundamental difficulties in not accounting for CMB features normally explained by inflation. However, conformal cyclic cosmology does so by displacing inflation to before the Big Bang. As the exponentially expanding remote future of an earlier cosmic eon, this eon is a universe epoch, resembling what we currently perceive to be the entire history without inflation of our universe. In CCC, there is an infinite successions of such eons, each having a Big Bang origin, which is the conformal continuation of the exponentially expanding remote future of the preceding eon. Conformal geometry allows for stretching or squashing of the metric structure, and is the geometry respected by a physics without mass, such as Maxwell's electromagnetism. This applies both to the remote future and Big Bang of each eon. So the matching of eon to eon makes geometrical sense and also physical sense because the conformal squashing of the cold low density remote future matches the conformal stretching of the hot dense Big Bang of the subsequent eon. The exceptions to this smooth conformal matching are the supermassive black holes in an eon's remote future, which would have, pardon me, the exceptions to this smooth conformal matching are the supermassive black holes in an eon's remote future, which would have almost completely swallowed its surrounding galactic cluster before eventually evaporating away entirely into Hawking radiation. However, by conformal squashing, all this radiated energy comes through into the succeeding eon at a single Hawking point. The emerging photons then scatter within an expanding region, but do not become free until 380,000 years later. There is a little squiggle hyphen before that. I don't know if that means anything with the years, but maybe light years, but 380,000 years later, when finally appearing in the CMB of the subsequent eon, the spread out region would look to us like a disk 4 degrees across, it says, i.e. squiggly hyphen, 8 times the diameter of our full moon, an effect that we appear to be actually seeing in our own CMB sky. Roger talks about his work in this November 2018 Oxford Mathematics public lecture. I know that was a lot. You can always rewind and just listen to what I say again. I apologize if I read fast or maybe stumbled upon some words, but that was a bit. And again, this is from the University of Oxford Mathematical Institute. If anybody wants to look it up and look at their own, leisure, there are some diagrams that you can look at. Just so they're explaining how the process of the Big Bang and how the inflation would occur together and how they're a process of each other. But again, I just thought it was a very interesting thing that I had no previous knowledge on, of Hawking points being something like that. And then to learn about them perhaps being, I guess, if not an entryway, a source of energy left over from a previous eon, just the amount of time that this would have to have been going on is incomprehensible to the human mind, and I just don't. It's so interesting, and we get these matter of seconds. Things have been going on for longer than forever, forever doesn't even encapsulate it in. And we have this blip, and that's why I just find it so silly people take this blip and make it so concrete. It's like we have this blip, a blip, and but oh, oof, but wait, yeah, we have a blip, but that doesn't mean like just do meaningless things. Because everything means nothing. You don't fill the nihilistic void that way, although that's the normal recommended dosage. But like, you fill the nihilistic void with purpose. Yeah, yeah. Not meaningless experience that you have to continually do so that you produce stimulus to distract yourself from your current state of being. Anyways, I just thought that the Roger Penrose thing was interesting about, you know, we're not shit. And this whole idea that like, oh, you're a king, I'm a king, like it's laughable. Like Mike Tyson even talks about like how delusional someone would have to be for them to be like a conqueror like Alexander the Great or Genghis Khan, like for someone to believe that the world belonged to them, like they were born human and they just have a brain that's telling them this whole thing is mine, and it's just very interesting, and I think that we have fed into that ideology under the guise of it being healthy, and it's not. People are becoming narcissistic and selfish, so it's like and and then they're being positively reinforced for such action. So it's an interesting environment or climate that we're experiencing. And it's funny, and I'm going to read again from this philosophy textbook, History and Problems, but it's funny, I'll eventually get to the passage where it says so, but there's this philosopher from probably fucking, you know, it was old as fuck. It was, he was 1600, like 1600 at least, something like that, talking about how he would walk out in the streets and couldn't believe how free people were about their sexual relations, their personal affairs, and like all of this stuff, and how regressed they became socially, creatively, literally, and in terms of literacy, not literally as in actuality. And it's amazing that, like, what if this really has just been a show on repeat, the same episode? Who knows how long the episode is, but like it's been the same episode over and over and over because not enough of us wake up, I guess. I'm not sure. You know, I don't know if there's any getting out of the cycle. I think there is a separation that you can make within yourself from this cycle, but I think this cycle is this cycle, and I think there's some purpose to the cycle. I believe it to be a prequel to a very massive journey of sorts. That's the way I look at things. I'm very optimistic of the future after death. I don't know. You know, there's a great quote from this guy named Rap Ferreira, and it's an acronym at the beginning: R period A period P period Ferreira. But he says, "Damn it, damn it. Death is where we all go. It can't be that bad." And it's like, yeah, we all go there. It can't be that bad. And if it is that bad, so what? We all go through the bitch. So it's like, okay, so like we signed up involuntarily. Okay, like that's how it is. Ooh, and this just popped in my head, just thinking about the conquerors and things. But like Caesar, man. I believe it was Caesar. This is off the top of the head, but Caesar, when maybe it was Alexander the Great. I think it was Alexander the Great. Now, I think it was Alexander the Great. Hang on. He felt so guilty at the end of his time, and you can hear. I think Mike Tyson is where I'm picking this up from too. Honestly, all of this shit, I'm just fucking biting from other people. Bruce Lee, though, he said to do it, so blame him. Mike Tyson talks about how at the end of his life he felt so guilty for all of the objects, treasures, territories that he had acquired, how big his land was, or his his empire, and at the end of his life, he made sure that, well, one, oh no, this is Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius, I guess, and like I'm not talking anything about Stoicism or the meditations, but he would have a man sit behind him telling him constantly, "You're just a man," and that shit is nectar. Like, yeah, bitch, humble yourself. Oh, and that's what happened with Alexander the Great towards the end of his life. He became so guilty and ashamed, and came to the understanding that, because what Mike Tyson meant, I believe, my interpretation was, when these men believed that the world was theirs, they believed that they were, if not God, a version of God, or an interpretation of it, or a vessel that God was being carried through. They believed they were godly. And then once that death came to their door, they realized very quickly they were just as mortal as everybody else was. I think, especially back then, there was a great, like, fantasy between royalty and peasantry and things like that, classical or classist systems, where people believed kings didn't bleed sometimes or something like that. Like, they just believed like these outlandish things because they were projected to be so above them, when in reality they never were. And so at the end of Alexander the Great's life, he had made sure his closest people did these things for him, which, one, cut a hole in his coffin so that his dead hand would be just dangling out, like dangling out of the coffin, and to show people that when you die, you can't take anything with you, you're empty-handed. And also, he had all of his treasures scattered behind his, like the pallbearers carrying him down the pathway, wherever. All of his treasures scattered, showing people that you couldn't take everything with you to the grave. Don't take anything with you to the grave. And that's what, like, I was like listening to Earl Nightingale, and it's like he talks about it, like, yeah, we're given the most priceless, valuable things for free, and we spend our entire lives acquiring material objects that are completely replaceable and meaningless. It's like it's a I don't want to use a negative term, but it's like it's a circus, and we're all in it, and we're all just kind of like, okay, yeah, it is a circus, but that's what it is. But it's like, why are we like, but yeah, like, that's what it is. Like, why don't we say, bitch, stop the ride? Like, I don't get it. I think we're in a culture of hand washing, What I mean by that is just everybody's constantly washing their hands of problems and making it not their own. Not my chair, not my problem. Great movie, Demolition, with Jake Gyllenhaal. When I moved to Long Island, New York, for the first, like, 3 weeks, I lived on a fucking couch. I had a couch and one of the old-ass box TVs, Like, box 12-inch screens. And, I somehow connected my fucking laptop and shit, but like I just remember at the beginning when I was so I could like watch things that obviously that TV was never made to watch on, but I was streaming Demolition, and it I don't know what the movie did to me, but like my soul resonated with it, and I kept watching it, like not nightly, but like I would say within a week or so, I'd watch it again and then again. And it was at a time when I was like fairly alone. I was a diesel mechanic, I was working with older guys that didn't really like, yeah. I was just a little bit alone, and so yeah, that movie's interesting. That movie, Demolition, Jake Gyllenhaal, Demolition with Jake Gyllenhaal. Watch it. Soundtrack is fucking fantastic. Didn't know what adjective I wanted to use, but fantastic sums it up somewhat. Gets it on at least tip of the iceberg definition of it. But it's beautiful. And the scene, he's dancing around in the fucking streets of New York City and shit. It's like, yes. And it's like when I lived, that's exactly what I was doing too. Like before like it's just like there's certain ways to live your life, and it's so beautiful to live it that way, bro. All these people you see in public, you are never going to see again for the most part. Okay, like I have a face tattoo on the side of my face. I have I have I'm the most identifiable person. Not the most like people, whatever. Like people are identifiable from a lot of things. But it's like I would go around acting like people don't care. They don't care. You care that they might care, but they guess what? They don't. So just fucking be yourself. Fucking, I used to go. I would on weekends when I was just chilling or something, not doing nothing. I'll go get those two big bottles of Heineken, and they'd be in a brown bag. I'd put in my fucking headphones, and I'd be walking down the street just fucking singing loud as shit. Because guess what? In New York City, there's fucking dope heads. There's everything. So a guy walking down the street with two alcoholic beverages singing lyrics to a song is the fucking bottom of the barrel of the experiences you're going to see in New York City. So like being in environments where you can be that open and being like able to express yourself and realize that there's no consequence. There's no consequence. There's only benefit. There's only benefit to you and the community around you for the most part. Anyways, we're going to read from this book again, Philosophy, History, and Problems. This is Plato's View of the Cosmos. All right. Plato's View of the Cosmos. Although Plato's most consistent and sustained thought centered around moral and political philosophy, he also turned his attention to science. His theory of nature or physics is found chiefly in the Timaeus, a dialogue that, according to some scholars, Plato wrote when he was about 70 years old. Plato had not deliberately postponed this subject, nor had he chosen to deal with moral matters instead of promoting the advancement of science. On the contrary, the science of his day had reached a blind alley, and there seemed to be no fruitful direction to take in the field. Earlier, according to Plato, Socrates has had a prodigious desire to know that department of philosophy which is called the investigation of nature, to know the cause of things. However, Socrates was disillusioned by the conflicting answers and theories put forward by Anaximander, Anaximenes, Leucippus, and Democritus, and others. Plato shared this disappointment. Moreover, as his own philosophy took shape, some of his theories about reality cast doubt on the possibility of a strictly accurate scientific knowledge. Physics, he thought, could never be more than a likely story. I like that, actually. Physics is just a likely story. Because it's like, I don't know, likely story. Like, yeah, I'm sure that happened. Like, if you get into physics and you get into, man, everything is oxymoronic. Oxymoron. Everything is an oxymoron and contradicting. It's very interesting how it can be the case, but like, it is, man. And that's again like, why do antagonists muscle training? Like, there's so many just like little principles and laws that if you just were like, oh, that's a little sweet treat. Let me pick that and put that in this and there. Let's see what happens. It's like, so much would be shown from it, but hardly people implement new things to their lifestyles. Whether that's habit, routine, diet, exercise, fucking reading a fucking physical book, like. I heard a saying one time, and I'll never forget this, and I'm going to say this shit to my daughter. Like, all right, before I go on, I have dated women that I did not have a bookshelf, right? Like, I was not reading books. I was not that intellectual, and I do kind of look at it, and I was like, I don't know, I was not a child, but it's like, yeah, like, what are you doing? And so basically what I'm saying is, the quote is, you should never, I think it, like this thing was like, you should never date a man whose TV is larger than his bookcase or his bookshelf. You should never date a man whose TV is larger than his bookshelf. And if you start using that as a metric for men, I don't know what man you'd really be dating, to be honest with you. I don't know. But it would cut the population down. I'll tell you that. It's incredible. I'm afraid we're becoming illiterate if we haven't already. I feel like we almost have already, and we just haven't seen the signs of it yet, and we're about to, and about to in the decade sense or so. Who knows? I gotta turn this light up just a little bit. I can't see shit. So, like he was saying, Plato thought that physics could never be more than a likely story. And that's something like Oppenheimer, like in that movie. I can't remember what they were talking about at the very beginning, but it's like a scene where he just gets to the university. He only has one like pupil or something like that, like one student in his class for this one thing, because he wanted to expose it like singularly to see how it would resonate. And they're talking about, like, I think the mass of an object or an element, or like the speed of light. Oh, it was the speed of light being particles and waves. And the kid goes, um, God. But anyways, that's what it is. It's light being light. It's light being waves and particles, and it's saying that that can't be, but it can, and here's why. And then he just turns around and goes to the blackboard and explains it, and it's like, it's so oxymoronic. Light is waves and particles, and I just love, and it's paradoxical and works, but here's why. It's like, I just love that. It's like, just fucking move on from it not making sense and understand. You don't need it to make sense. Just understand. I feel like we've gotten into this sense of society where all we want is things to make sense. Bitch, it doesn't. Human condition. Not this don't make that this does not make sense. Doesn't. We're here for whatever reason. What is it? 400 billion to one that you're here. 400 trillion to one that you got born, but just became yourself. I don't know why I feel like I'm emotional right now, but anyways, Plato thought physics was just a likely story. Like, I think Einstein called it spooky. I think he called it. I think that might have actually been relating to string theory, but maybe that was relating to. I'm not sure actually, but I just remember he referred to something as spooky, and I believe it was something with gravitational anomalies or black holes. I think, like that, the science or the physics that led to black holes existing. Like, he just, I think, claimed was spooky, and I think that's funny. It was particularly It was particularly his theory of the forms that rendered science as an exact type of knowledge impossible. It was particularly his theory of the forms that rendered science as an exact type of knowledge impossible. Okay. The real world, he said, is the world of forms, whereas the visible world is full of change and imperfection. Yet it is about their Yet it is about the visible world of things that science seeks to build its theories. How can we formulate accurate, reliable, and permanent knowledge about a subject matter that it itself is imperfect and full of change? At the same time, though, Plato clearly felt that his theory of the forms, as well as his notions of morality, evil, and truth, required a view of the cosmos in which all these elements of his thought could be brought together in a coherent way, recognizing then that his account of the material world was only a likely story, or at best probable knowledge. He nevertheless was convinced that what he had to say about the world was as accurate as the subject matter would allow. He would nevertheless He nevertheless was convinced that what he had to say about the world was an accurate and he nevertheless was convinced that what he had to say about the world was as accurate as subject matter would allow. Meaning he reached the bounds of defining in language. And I understand that. There's a lot of unspoken truths and a lot of like another Oppenheimer thing. Very beginning of the movie, he's in his little fucking classroom. The big scientist guy's there visiting, and he like they're talking about how Oppenheimer asked a question during one of the seminars and things, and then it's such a beautiful question because like if you get it, like it is exactly that. But the like the major scientist when Oppenheimer was just a student, asked him, "Your work is good." And like his math wasn't, I guess, at the time or whatever, but his theory and things. So he was like, "Your work is good, but do you hear the music? Do you hear the music? Do you hear it? Do you hear it? Like, do you hear the music? Because if not, it's like, find it. Find where it is. Because I promise you, this universe is playing. This is a play. I don't even know what I was talking about because I just think that's so beautiful. This is like, do you hear the music? And it has nothing to do with like actual type kind of music per se. That's what I love about it. It's like, yeah, bitch, I turned that bitch up to 11 Spinal Tap, like, yeah, I hear the music. That's all I want to hear. Fuck the noise out there. I want the music. Yes, 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 yes. Now, Plato's first thought about the world was that, though it is full of change and imperfection, it nevertheless exhibits order and purpose. He rejected the explanation given by Democritus, who had argued that all things came into being through the accidental collision of atoms. When Plato considered, for example, the orbits of the planets, he observed that they were arranged according to a precise series of geometrical intervals, which, when appropriately calculated, produced the basis for the harmonic scale. I fucking love human beings, bro. I'm gonna read that shit again. When Plato considered, for example, the orbits of the planets, he observed that they were arranged according to a precise series of geometrical intervals. Fuck, I'm reading that again because this sentence is beautiful. When Plato considered, for example, the orbits of the planets, he observed that they were arranged according to a precise series of geometrical intervals, which, when appropriately calculated, produced the basis for the harmonic scale. Plato made much of Pythagorean mathematics in describing the world. However, instead saying, as the Pythagoreans did, that things are numbers, he said that things participate in numbers and that they are capable of a mathematical explanation. Yes, Jordan Peterson talks about how his brother-in-law worked for an AI company. The AI software picked between 6 to 8 programs, and it was problem-solving software. However, there was no way of telling what the AI was going to pick in terms of software to solve the problem until after the fact. But after the fact, you could always go back and see the decision tree or the making that it had done to get to the answer of using that software over the others. And that's exactly what it is. It's like, of fucking course, there are numbers and the fucking formula. Like to make anything, there had to be X, Y, and Z put in to make it. And it's like, why are we so stuck on, like for exercise, as an example, just fucking exercise.